On the day I was kidnapped, I didn't feel the slightest bit of fear, but what shocked me was that my parents were celebrating my disappearance. That day, I was kidnapped. Just when I wanted to ask my biological parents for help, I found that they were celebrating and setting off firecrackers to celebrate my death. They even took the so-called suicide note and tried to seize the company shares I owned. But I'm not afraid of the people who kidnapped me. I even called the person in front of me and asked for a hug. It was because in my previous life, I was killed by my girlfriend and her family. However, that sickly female tycoon, the woman who once treated me as a plaything, became the force of my revenge when I was most desperate. Not only did she avenge me, but she also died with me in the end. We died together for love and lived a new life. But this time, I was no longer willing to be manipulated by her. I only wanted to love Eve, but I would never accept any forced feelings. I looked at the beauty in front of me, and I was sure that this was not a dream, nor a hallucination before death, but real, and I was alive again. However, fate seemed to be unforgiving to me. Once again, I was caught, and even my hands and feet were chained, trapped in this situation full of complicated emotions. A tear fell involuntarily, and my heart was in chaos. In the darkness, a faint light illuminated my eyes. Eve saw me crying, paused, and whispered, "Alexander, are you scared again? Why can't you be a little bit good?" I opened my arms without hesitation and hugged her tightly. She was obviously stunned for a moment, then slowly said, "Alexander, what tricks are you trying to play? Don't dream about it. Tonight you can only belong to me." Although I said it coldly, the hug from the woman in front of me comforted me. I nodded hastily and whispered back, "I will always belong to you alone." Eve frowned slightly. "Didn't you say that you feel disgusted whenever you touch yourself? If so, prove it to me." Then she slowly moved closer, her lips almost touching mine. The familiar and overbearing touch instantly made my heart beat faster. I once thought Eve was a perverted, crazy, sickly, and malicious woman. At that time, I just wanted to escape from her control. I have always been deeply afraid of her. However, after all this, I really felt the other side of Eve. Her beauty was a little morbid, a little dangerous, but so charming. Her every move, every care, made me unable to extricate myself. In the past, I was always afraid of her coercion and control, and I thought I would escape. However, Eve kept chasing me, and the more I resisted, the more she chased me. I remember when I was in college, Eve suddenly appeared in front of me and told me, without any reservation, that she wanted me to marry her. When I refused, everything started to develop in a strange direction with a bit of horror. Time passed quickly, and I finally realized that I could not get rid of Eve as control. Every time I resisted, she pressed me closer. It was like how I run, she chases drama between us. Another year passed in a flash. Finally, during Eve's business trip, an accident happened. Kelly deceived me into signing a share transfer document. Not long after, she, my adoptive mother, and my younger brother jointly pushed me off the rooftop. My father took my so-called suicide note and successfully inherited all my shares plus his own shares, becoming the actual person in charge of the group. And I could only turn into a soul, quietly watching all this. Seeing that scumbag father and stepmother, they were so happy about my death as if they were celebrating their victory. Eve went crazy and demanded to dig up my grave, but, ironically, there was not even a coffin. She hugged my unrecognizable body and cried heartbreakingly, "Alexander, why didn't you listen to me? Why didn't you stay with me? I'm sorry I didn't protect you. Wait for me. I will go with you soon." Her voice was low and painful, as if she was suffering from endless guilt and regret. The final outcome of the matter was chilling. Lin Tianba was cut into pieces by Eve, and the unbearable people around him could not escape her means. Lu Yueme was made into a feast by Eve, and all the people in the Lu family were invited to enjoy this banquet, and then the Lu family was completely destroyed. As for Kelly, Eve did not execute her, but sent her to Southeast Asia to be a concubine. After completing all this, Eve returned to the manor, changed into a wedding dress, and slowly lay down in the ice crystal coffin. She whispered, "Alexander, I am here to accompany you." I clearly realized that, regardless of life or death, Eve's love for me was so strong and persistent. Her morbid love, like a sharp knife, had already deeply engraved into my heart, and I may only be able to spend this life with her. "Look, I put on a wedding dress for you. Isn't it beautiful? We will sleep together in life and be classmates in death." Her voice was full of determination and love. I was speechless, just staring at her silently, feeling this indescribable emotion. Everything is irreversible. The pain and missed opportunities in the past have become an insurmountable gap between us. I finally realized that this relationship has long been beyond the understanding and control of ordinary people, and I have long been powerless to resist. Eve saw me staring at her absent-mindedly and frowned slightly, as if she had sensed my mixed feelings. I came back to my senses, and the softness in my arms reminded me that everything still had a chance to change. This time, I decided to make up for my mistake and love her with all my life. Eve, The words came to my lips, but I stopped suddenly. I knew she was afraid that I would say something that would make her desperate, so she didn't give me a chance. She kissed me, and the kiss was as fierce as fire, as if she wanted to devour me. I began to respond to her passion, and Eve nodded in satisfaction. She pushed me down on the bed with a hint of dominance. If what you said last night was a lie to me, I will cut off your tongue. She warned me coldly. I shuddered, knowing that she was a lunatic who could do anything. Don't worry. I will only belong to you from now on. I whispered. Her expression relaxed a little, and she seemed to trust me a little. What did you want to say when you went to see Kelly yesterday? Her tone was provocative. I was stunned for a moment, and then I was silent for a moment. I should have confessed my feelings to Kelly, even though I didn't know how many times I had confessed my feelings to her. But I knew that after this confession, Eve would become even crazier and even more possessive of me. Eve, I wanted Kelly to draw a line in the sand. Actually, I never liked her. Do you believe it? I finally confessed. Eve's eyes were cold. I don't believe it. Do you think I would believe such a low-level lie? Okay, I admit that I was blind to like Kelly before, but now I can see clearly that you are what I want in my life. I finally said what was in my heart. Do you think I will let you go just like that? If you dare to go find Kelly again, I don't mind making her into a specimen and putting her here, letting her watch every night how I possess you. Her eyes were full of threats and determination. I know that the harm I have done to Eve is irreparable, but now that I have been reborn, I have decided to use my life to prove that I am not lying. That night, we were entangled together. When I woke up the next morning, Eve was no longer by my side. The iron chain on my wrist that had originally bound me was nowhere to be found. The door of the villa's bedroom was gently pushed open, and the butler Fu Bo walked in. When he saw me, he quickly asked, Master Lin, are you having dinner now? I have always had a good impression of Uncle Fu. He is one of the few people who still maintains a gentle attitude around my father. In my previous life, it was this housekeeper, Uncle Fu, who persuaded me the most. Miss Eve went out to the company, and I nodded and sat at this small dining table. Bowls of soup were placed in front of me, one after another, and Uncle Fu smiled like an auntie. When Miss asked me to prepare more tonic soup in the morning, I was really surprised. I didn't expect that Master Lin finally blossomed. I thought to myself, I am such a man, but I was considered weak by a woman. I felt complicated. In fact, which man can endure such a wave of torment? This is all Eve's fault. I slowly started to eat, but ignored the bowl of nourishing soup. Suddenly, I glanced at the caller ID and saw the word Dad. I couldn't help but frown and picked up the phone. Lin Tianba's angry voice came from the other end of the phone. Little beast, where are you? I heard that you were kidnapped. Do you know how anxious your mother and brother are? They waited for a whole day and a night, but didn't get a call from the kidnappers. Can you give me a decent explanation? I knew very well that this was Kelly's tone. I also received a similar call in my previous life. At that time, I told my biological father that I was kidnapped by Eve and recounted my experience. Who knew that the person on the other end hung up the phone without saying a word. After confirming that it was Eve who did it, they seemed to not care at all. I narrowed my eyes slightly, wondering, did they want me to die at that time? But suddenly, I felt something was wrong. Did they really want me to die? On the other end of the phone, Lin Tianba suddenly froze, as if listening to me in disbelief. Lin Jian whispered to me, Dad, maybe my brother was really kidnapped, and he didn't want to implicate you, so he pretended to have a bad relationship with you. Now, the kidnapper may be next to him. After hearing this, Lin Tianba suddenly realized something and showed a hint of understanding. That should be the case. Otherwise, how could a son who has always been submissive suddenly rebel? He seemed moved. Don't worry, son. After you die, Dad will definitely hold a grand ceremony for you. Although Dad can't help you redeem yourself now, you can ask the kidnappers if you have any other requirements. As long as it is possible, Dad will do it. As for whether the body can be kept intact, Dad has tried his best. I was so angry that I laughed, and the anger in my heart surged up. Who said I was kidnapped? I just went home with my wife. You guys are so foolish. Your heads are like watermelons with hair. You are full of bad things. You idiots deserve to have an old beast like you as your father. What did you say? Lin Tian was so angry that he completely lost control. I'm your father. How dare you talk to me like that? Jiang Nan and Jiang Bei. Who doesn't know who I am? I hit back without any hesitation. You little beast, do you have a suppository in your mouth? When you open your mouth, you either spit out feces or poop. Your name is just as stupid as an idiot. Don't call me Lin Tianba. Just call me Lin Wangba. I cursed him thoroughly and hung up the phone. Then I blocked the entire Lin family's phone numbers in one go. Lin family, wait for me. I will let you know who is the father in 2 days, I said angrily. Uncle Fu looked at me in shock. Obviously, he didn't expect that I would have such a quarrel with the Lin family. And I actually said, I went home with my wife. Uncle Fu almost burst into tears and hurriedly gave me another bowl of soup. I lay in the villa, too lazy to go out, thinking about Eve and really wanting to snuggle up with her. I picked up my phone and searched for the chat history full of transfer records that I had never received. Suddenly, I noticed that in the Lin family villa, Lin Tianba threw his phone out in anger, hitting Lin Jian's forehead. Fuck! Lu Yume was shocked and quickly checked her son's injuries. Son, are you okay? Lin Tianba was stunned. Looking at Lin Jian with blood oozing from his forehead, he was also shocked. I'm sorry, son. Dad didn't mean it. Lin Jian endured the pain and still behaved obediently. It's okay, Dad. You should find a way to save my brother first. At least let the kidnappers leave him with an intact body. After hearing these words, Lin Tianba still said coldly, Don't worry about that rebellious son. He deserves to die. Lu Yume handed him the phone and comforted him. Yes, husband, Sharon must have been threatened just now. Make another call quickly and make sure the kidnappers leave the body intact. Lin Tianba was so moved that tears were about to fall, and he sighed. You guys are so kind. Alexander, that rebellious son, could be half as sensible as Xiaojian. I wouldn't have let him sleep in the utility room. After that, Lin Tianba took the phone and asked, What's the phone number of that rebellious son? But as soon as these words came out, the three of them fell silent. It turned out that none of them seemed to have my phone number. The last call I made was to ask Kelly for his number. Lin Tianba had no choice but to call Kelly again. After finally getting the phone, Lin Bat Ian quickly dialed my number. However, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get through. Even after replacing the phone with a new part, it still didn't help. Forget it. Let's ignore this matter for now and rush to send Xiaojian to the hospital. Look at his wound. It's at least 1 centimeter deep. Turning our attention to the Luo Group's high-level meeting room. Every time there was a meeting, those executives felt like they were going to the execution ground. If it weren't for the Luo Group's generous treatment, they would have run away long ago. Today, Mr. Luo's face was so cold that it seemed to freeze water instantly. Eve was playing with a pen in her hand, and murderous intent was rising in her heart. Just this afternoon, the assistant reported that Kelly wanted to get an internship certificate. Kelly is an intern in a subsidiary of Rockwell Group. Eve is behind the scenes. I went to find Kelly yesterday and received news from her today. Eve is already thinking about whether to make Kelly disappear forever. She couldn't help but wonder, if Kelly was gone, would I fall apart, or would I stay with her? She didn't want to gamble, and she didn't dare to gamble. At this moment, a special WeChat message sounded. Eve paused for a moment, then picked up the phone. Then, all the executives saw that Eve, who was originally as cold as ice, gradually raised her lips. Oh my God, Mr. Luo actually smiled. What kind of information is this that has such great magic? They were all dumbfounded. This meeting is over. This month's bonus will be increased by 100,000 yuan per person. After saying this, Eve stood up and left, leaving a group of executives dumbfounded. How could the boss suddenly be satisfied with their work and give them bonuses? This was too unbelievable. Sitting in the office, Eve looked at the words in the message. Your family misses you. When will you be back? And couldn't calm down for a long time. After thinking for a while, she replied with a message. It's almost done. I'm going back. You can finish the rest of the work. Lu Meng was shocked. Mr. Luo was actually leaving get off work early. Oh my God. On the way back, Eve received a message from the housekeeper Fu Bo. The housekeeper sent Eve the details of the call record between Lin Jia and me today. After Eve saw it, her eyes suddenly became unusually bright. In the villa of my wife's private estate, I took action immediately after receiving the message and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner for Eve. This is the best way I can give now. At this time of my previous life, I could only be chained to the bed. At least now I am not bound by chains, and I dare not ask for too much. I can only take it slowly. Moreover, living in such a comfortable villa, having everything provided for me, and having a beautiful and charming wife, isn't this already the pinnacle of life? I couldn't help but wonder why I had to live the hard life I had before. My childhood was pretty good, but everything changed after my mother passed away. With a stepmother, there is a stepfather, and there is also a younger brother who wants to kill me all the time. In the Lin family, I have no status at all. Even the tuition for college was earned by working part-time. Now I have a chable wife. How sweet. At night, when the chef and servants in the villa saw me cooking, they were all shocked. The kitchen is a dangerous place in the family. If I got into trouble or got hurt, they would all be doomed. But seeing my skilled knife skills and how to start a fire and heat the oil, the chef was slightly shocked. Mr. Lin, a young master who lives in luxury, can actually cook? After I finished cooking 8 dishes and 1 soup, which I am good at, Eve came back. Seeing that there was no one in the hall, she immediately went upstairs to the bedroom. She pushed open the door and saw that there was no one inside. Her face instantly turned cold, and she kept muttering, "No one is here, no one is here. Last time, no one was here because I ran away. Uncle Fu took all the bodyguards and servants in the house to look for me. No one is here this time. Could it be that Alexander? Why are you so naughty?" Eve took out her cell phone, turned on an unknown button, and saw that the location was at the villa. When she was wondering, Uncle Fu rushed in from the kitchen and said, "Miss, you are back. Master Lin is in the kitchen. He said he would cook for you personally." Eve was stunned for a moment, and then slowly returned to normal. Uncle Fu wiped his sweat, thinking that it was fortunate that he spoke quickly, otherwise he might have lost his life. "Miss, Master Lin is almost done. You can go downstairs." Eve nodded coldly, went into the bedroom to change her clothes, and headed for the dining room. I asked the servant to bring the dishes to the dining room, and I followed her out of the kitchen. Then I saw Eve. I don't know why, but the moment I saw her, I felt an incomparable joy, as if I had seen the most wonderful thing. This was a feeling I had never experienced before. I walked towards Eve with my arms outstretched, then kissed her on the forehead and said, "Let's go home. I've cooked dinner. Let's eat together." "Okay." Eve's eyes sparkled with stars. She thought, is this what it feels like to have Alexander? But then she thought again and felt that it was unlikely, and her face turned cold again. My head was full of question marks, and I thought, "No, buddy, you are learning face changing, right?" Eve was sitting at the dining table, wearing casual home clothes, which made people imagine a lot. I sat next to her, lit the candles that had been prepared, and told the servant to turn off the lights. Eve was very satisfied with my change, and she even thought that it would be nice if I could continue acting. I served Eve a bowl of beauty soup and then served myself one. Fu Bo interrupted quickly. "Miss, this soup looks delicious. Please give me a bowl first." Uncle Fu was really afraid that I had poisoned the food. Eve looked at Uncle Fu coldly. Uncle Fu knew he had made a mistake and felt a little embarrassed. Eve said coldly, "No need. This was done by Alexander. I trust him." But I smiled calmly. I couldn't blame Uncle Fu. This worry was very reasonable. I said, "Let me go first." Without waiting for everyone's reaction, I quickly drank 2 sips of the soup, then took a little bit of each dish to try. I felt that the taste was not bad, and Eve should like it. Fu Bo smiled awkwardly and said, "I am a petty person, sorry." I said, "I have lost my memory, it's okay." Eve said coldly, "This month's bonus is gone." When Fu Bo heard this, his pupils instantly dilated, and he held his head with both hands, his face full of disbelief. For him, this was even more painful than killing him. Then, I just looked at Eve quietly. The dim romantic candlelight made Eve even more charming. I couldn't get enough of looking at her peerless beauty. Eve asked, "Who is prettier, me or Kelly?" This is a surefire question. I must have been blind before, because I couldn't even see such a beautiful woman in front of me. Fortunately, my sight has been restored now, so I have to see more. I said, "I want to see it for the rest of my life." The first half of the sentence touched Eve's heart, but the last sentence made her feel anxious. She asked, "What do you regret?" "Regret giving your body to yourself yesterday." I suddenly felt the air around me turn cold. I thought, why is she so angry all of a sudden? Did I say something wrong? I quickly said, "I regret not realizing your beauty before." Damn it. Sure enough, Eve's originally cold aura disappeared, and the curve of her mouth became more and more obvious. Uncle Fu saw it, and was so shocked that his pupils were shaking. He thought, young Master Lin is saying something sweet. My God, Miss hasn't smiled like this in a long time. At this time, A drop of soup flowed down the corner of Eve's mouth. I subconsciously reached out my hand to wipe it. Even though we had the most intimate contact, we were both stunned at this moment, and then our hearts began to beat fast. I just watched the drop of soup slowly flow down, and finally dripped. The picture made people can't help but imagine. I took my hand back a little helplessly and said, "I'm sorry, I just want to help you wipe it." After that, Eve asked me to feed her. I looked at Eve's delicate red lips, swallowed my saliva, and said okay. Then I scooped a spoonful of soup from my bowl and slowly passed it to Eve's mouth. Uncle Fu was shocked. He knew that the young lady had misophobia and hated men. Master Lin actually used his own spoon to feed the young lady soup. He slowly took out his mobile phone and sent a message, "Prepare a crystal coffin." But then, he saw that his young lady actually opened her mouth to drink and even licked the spoon. Fu Bo thought that he must have seen it wrong. At this time, Eve's slow voice came. "Fu Bo, do you also want to have our candlelight dinner for two?" Fu Bo felt a chill on his back, shook his head quickly, and immediately signaled everyone to leave, and he followed him out. I took out my phone again and sent a message. "Cancel the coffin." Looking at Eve's tender lips, I continued to feed her gently. This feeling satisfied Eve, and she gradually became addicted to it. She asked, "Alexander, are you really not lying to me? Even if you are, I admit it." Eve actually had no desire for food, but because it was made by me, she wanted to taste it all and eat as much as possible. The meal lasted for a long time, and the two of them ate from the dining room to the bedroom. Suddenly, my phone rang. I saw the note was Goddess. Damn, I actually left this bitch behind when I blocked her. Eve also saw it, and the air seemed to drop 8 degrees in an instant. I hung up the phone and was about to kiss Eve again, but the phone rang again. Just when I was about to hang up and turn off the phone, Eve said, "Pick it up." At this moment, 1,000 horses galloped through my heart. "Kelly, you'd better be sensible and don't say anything that will make my wife unhappy." When the call was connected, Kelly said, "Brother Alexander, where are you?" I thought impatiently. "I am," Kelly asked again. Brother Lin ran. "Please say something. Are you okay? Who was the woman who took you away that day?" Eve asked me a slightly provocative question. "Alexander, who is the woman you love most?" I quickly said, "You. I only love you." At this time, a different voice sounded on the phone, and Kelly was very familiar with it. She was anxious and asked, "Lin ran, what are you doing? Why is there a woman's voice around you?" I was almost suffocated by Eve's torment, so I pushed her away and cursed into the phone. "I'm with my wife. If you have nothing to do, get out. If you have something to do, go to hell." After saying this, I was surrounded by Eve again, and then an even harsher voice sounded. It was a joyful voice, but also a provocative and contemptuous voice for Kelly. Kelly couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Alexander, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. I misjudged you. You really disappoint me." Afterwards, I played with Eve's 2 jade feet in my hands and said, "Eve, we have to be more restrained. Otherwise, I'm really afraid that I will die on you." Eve was very satisfied with my attitude towards Kelly today. She said, "I just can't control myself. What can I do? It seems that only by becoming one with you like this can you truly belong to me. If you really die under me, I will die with you without hesitation. In the underworld, you will still be mine." I was silent. I knew very well that Eve would definitely do this. I couldn't help wondering, what was so good about me that made Eve fall for me? Eve said again, "Alexander, I'm so scared. I'm afraid you will turn around and leave me tomorrow. So, even if you were lying to me, can you keep lying to me?" My heart tightened. Even if Eve thought I was lying to her, she was willing to do so. What kind of deformed love is this? She added, "Even if I get your false love, I will treasure it. Eve, whether you believe it or not." I looked at Eve with a firm gaze and said seriously, "I will always be with you and love you. We will always be like this. Trust me, okay?" Eve's eyes sparkled, and I knew that was tears of emotion. She was actually very soft-hearted, but she always tried to pretend to be strong. I know in my heart that it is not easy for her to live in this world. Everyone can cry, but she cannot, because once she cries, it means she is showing her fragility to the world. In this world where the strong prey on the weak, once a person is vulnerable, he will be ruthlessly trampled underfoot. After a night of tenderness, I felt like my body was drained. There was really not a drop left. At this moment, I deeply realized that cows can really be exhausted to death. DR10 after breakfast, I walked to the cloakroom that I had never been to before. It was filled with luxury clothes, each of which was like a carefully crafted work of art, exuding a unique charm. Desante and I picked and chose and found an outfit that looked pretty good. Looking at myself in the mirror, I couldn't help but sigh that clothes make the man. The only flaw was my messy hair, which looked like a bird's nest. I stood in front of the mirror, thinking to myself, this hair is really affecting my image. I need to go and fix it. After thinking about it, I sent a message to Eve. No matter what I do now, my first thought is to send a message to Eve to report. This was not because I was afraid of her, but because I wanted to take care of her little emotions from the bottom of my heart and make her feel at ease at all times. I wrote, "Wife, I want to go out for a haircut and then go to the Lin family to pick up some things." After a while, Eve replied, "Can I ask the stylist to go to the manor?" Seeing her reply, my heart was warmed. I felt that she was really thoughtful and had considered everything for me. Eve on the other side of the phone looked at the message in her hand. A faint smile appeared on her face, and then she fell into a daze. She kept chewing on the name wife, feeling sweet in her heart. The more she thought about it, the more she liked it. After thinking about it, she changed my note to husband. Soon, the stylist arrived at the manor. According to my request, he carefully designed a hairstyle for me that looked like it was worth 1 billion. After getting my hair done, I was ready to go to the Lin family, so I said to Uncle Fu, "Uncle Fu, can you lend me a car? There are no taxis in the manor." Uncle Fu smiled and said, "Master Lin, you are joking. You can drive any car in the garage. They are all given to you by the young lady." I suddenly remembered that Eve had given me many things, but I didn't seem to care much about them. In the locker in the cloakroom, there were many property certificates, many car certificates, and a black card with an unknown amount of credit. I nodded and said, "Okay, then please ask Fubo to prepare a few more bodyguards for me so that I can go out and do some errands." Walking into the garage, I was dazzled by the dazzling array of luxury cars. In the end, I chose a Koenigsegg. This car is so luxurious. I have never seen one before. Now I can actually drive it out. I feel a little excited just thinking about it. Soon, a super luxurious motorcade was driving on the streets of Kyoto. Along the way, no matter what kind of car saw us, they all avoided us. Following closely behind my car was Uncle Fu's car. He knew in his heart that he must not let me escape again. After all, I was someone who could make the young lady smile. In his eyes, I was a treasure that must not be lost. Soon, I parked the car outside the Lin family villa. I led 10 bodyguards and broke into the villa in a mighty manner. At this time, Lin Jian in the villa frowned slightly and said to Lin Tianba, "Dad, do you really not care about my brother? You should contact him. If he is not dead, we can ask the kidnappers to leave us a whole body. After all, he is my favorite brother." Lu Yueme also echoed, "Yes, husband, Xiaojian is right. Xiaoran is also my son. You should talk to the kidnappers and leave us an intact body so that it will be easier to bury." Lin Tianba frowned. When he thought of me as rebellious son, he felt a severe headache. He thought to himself, "I have always been a very obedient son in their eyes. Why did they scold me last time? If they didn't scold me, maybe they could find a way to save me. But now, he snorted disdainfully, thinking to himself, "Don't worry about that rebellious son. I am his father. Even if he comes back, he has to kneel down and kowtow to me and admit his mistakes before I will let him live back in the Lin family." Lu Yueme looked worried at this moment, but she was secretly delighted in her heart. She knew in her heart that Lin Tianba's attitude towards me had reached an almost irreversible point. At this moment, the door of the villa was broken open by a huge external force, and I shouted loudly, "Old beast, your living father is here to find you." Seeing that it was me, Lin Tianba flew into a rage. He stood up, pulled out his belt, and cursed, "How dare you come back, you little bastard? If you don't kowtow and admit your mistake today, I'll beat you to death." However, before Lin Tianba could make any move to hit anyone, several bodyguards rushed out from behind me and pinned him to the ground. This action frightened Lin Jian and his mother. Lin Jian started to speak in a sarcastic tone again. "Brother is back. I missed you so much. When I heard that you were kidnapped, I couldn't eat or drink, and I just wanted to save brother. But brother, why did you bring outsiders to bully dad as soon as you came back? Let him go, dear dad." Lu Yueme also said quickly, "Xiao Ran is back. Let your dad go. He was so worried during the 2 days you disappeared." They were still pretending to be in contact with the kidnappers and trying to rescue me. I was speechless when I heard this. What kind of people are this family? I glanced at them coldly. With a glance, the bodyguards understood immediately and pinned Lin Jian and his mother to the ground. At this time, a nanny rushed out of the nanny room. When she saw me, she hurriedly said, "Master, hello, Aunt Wang." Aunt Wong is the only person in this family that I don't hate. She helped me a lot when I was in the most difficult time, so seeing her, I felt a little better. Lin Tianba was pinned to the ground, but he was still furious and shouted, "Little beast, let me go. I am your father." I slowly squatted down, pulled out the so-called Seven Wolves belt from his hand, turned it in my hand, and then without hesitation, I whipped him hard with the belt buckle. There was a crisp snap sound, followed by a scream, and blood instantly gushed from Lin Tianba's head. I said viciously, "Old man, remember this. Don't tell me you are my daddy next time we meet, and you must kneel down and kowtow to me every time we meet, or I will beat you like I did today." As I whipped him again and again, Lin Tianba's screams continued. Lin Jian and his mother were stunned by the scene before them. They opened their eyes wide with fear on their faces. I was tired and refreshed from smoking. I stretched my sore muscles and bones and slowly looked at Lin Jian and his mother. Lin Jian and his mother looked into my eyes. I thought they would be scared, but unexpectedly, there was a hint of excitement in their eyes. Yes, excitement, which gave me a chill in my heart. I slowly said, "Lawyer Sue, it's up to you from now on." After that, I slowly went upstairs and returned to the storage room where I had been imprisoned for many years. Su Kai, a big name in the legal profession, walked out quickly from behind with a stern look on his face. He handed a document to Lin Tianba, who was still wailing on the ground. Lin Tianba was in excruciating pain when he suddenly saw the document. He was stunned and asked, "What is this?" Su Kai said calmly, "This is the document that Mr. Alexander has severed his relationship with you. Please sign it." When Lin Tianba heard this, he was completely stunned. He stared at the document blankly, unable to calm down for a long time. He slowly turned his head and saw me holding a suitcase in my hand. He suppressed his anger and asked, "Rebellious son, are you serious?" The corners of my mouth slightly raised, I smiled and nodded, and asked, "What else?" Lin Tianba was so angry that he laughed. Okay. You rebellious son. Remember, you will never think of returning to the Lin family in this life. Even if you kneel down and beg me, I will no longer recognize you as my son." I clapped happily and said, "It's a deal. Good things come in pairs." Lin Tianba was furious and signed his name on the document without a second thought. Lin Jian and his mother looked at each other and smiled meaningfully. This smile made me feel very uncomfortable. I felt that they were planning something bad again. I put away the documents and looked at Lin Jian and his mother, who were sad but smiling strangely. I felt amused. I said, "By the way, I took my shares with me. The shares of Su Ran Group were left to me by my mother. Don't even think about taking a penny from me." As soon as this sentence came out, several people present were shocked, as if they suddenly remembered this matter. Lu Yuanmei said hypocritically, "Xiao Ran, why do you hold so many shares? Quickly transfer the shares to me unconditionally. When you graduate from college, Dad will transfer them to you." Lin Jian also echoed, "Yes, brother, Dad is the chairman. If we give the company's shares to Dad first, it will also give Dad more say in the company." I almost vomited when I heard this. Why didn't I realize this family was so disgusting before? I shook the severance letter in my hand and said coldly, "You and I are just strangers. You scolded me, so I am very angry. As a means of self-defense, I need to beat you to vent my anger." This made lawyer Su Kai at the side a little bit at a loss, and he quickly said, "Leave some breath, don't beat them to death." Soon, several people were beaten black and blue. Lu Yuanmei and her son no longer had their previous hypocrisy. They started to curse and swear, but after cursing for a few times, they saw that the situation was not right and began to beg for mercy. I squatted in front of Lin Tianba and asked coldly, "Who is the father between us?" Lin Tianba was in great pain and said through gritted teeth, "You are my father." I continued, "By the way, since we have severed our relationship, some things need to be made clear. When I was 13, my mother passed away and left me 30% of the shares of the Su Ran Group. I am 23 years old this year, so you have to give me the dividends of the Su Ran Group for the past 10 years. I checked the company's financial statements, and you have to give me 300 million. I beat you today, and according to the highest treatment standards of the pet hospital, I will compensate you 10,000. I have spent a total of 18,000 at the Lin family in the past 10 years, so you still have to give me 299,972,000. Remember to put it on my card." Lin Tianba was shocked and said, "What? Where can I get so much money?" Lin Tianba did not lie. He really could not come up with so much cash. Although the market value of Su Ran Group had reached 3 billion, it was impossible for it to come up with 300 million in working capital. I didn't care about that. I said, I don't care. Anyway, you spent all my money. My lawyer will contact you. If you can't come up with the money, I'll send you to jail. Lin Tianba was still quibbling. Rebellious son, I have raised you for so many years and I have not paid anything? I sneered. Haha, you are pretending to be your mother. Didn't we just figure it out? The day after my mother passed away, you brought your mistress home. She started to give me 300 yuan a month until I was 18 years old. After you gave me 18,000 yuan, I never spent a penny of your family's money, right? Lin Tianba was stunned. He didn't expect that I only spent such a small amount of money for my family. After thinking about it, it seemed to be true, and he couldn't help feeling a little guilty. He still didn't give up and said, You have spent a lot on food and clothing over the years. I sneered and said, I eat at school. Even at home, I cook for them. I am cheaper than a nanny. After cooking, I am often punished by not allowing them to eat. I was wearing a school uniform. I never bought any clothes before I was 18, and I bought my own clothes after that. So, I'll call you a child abuser. Lin Tianba was completely shocked. He realized that he was too harsh on his son. I didn't want to listen to his nonsense, so I said, Don't be in a daze. The dividends can't be less than 1 cent. If you are less than 1 cent, my lawyer will send you to jail and charge you with child abuse. After that, I turned around and walked out the door, shouting in my heart, Great! Back in the car, I drove to Huatian Plaza, the most famous luxury goods shopping mall in Kyoto, thinking of buying myself something I like and rewarding myself for being freed from the hell of the Lin family. Walking into the mall, I was stunned by the dazzling array of luxury goods. A seemingly ordinary bag was priced at 180,000 yuan, and a small bottle of perfume was priced at 38,000 yuan. I couldn't help but complain in my heart. In this place, is it possible that even a pile of dog shit costs 880? Although I was born in the Lin family has always called it raising a child in poverty and didn't give me money, so I never had the chance to come to this kind of place to shop. Why don't they just raise Lin Jian in poverty like this? I looked at the only 13,000 balance in my phone and fell silent. This was the money I saved by working hard for the entire summer vacation and doing various part-time jobs. I originally planned to buy a bag for Kelly with this money, but now I want to buy a gift for Eve. But I never expected that the things here are ridiculously expensive. Even so, I don't plan to use the black card Eve gave me. It's not that I'm being pretentious, but I want to buy Eve a gift with the money I earn. The clerk seemed to see my embarrassment and gradually stopped paying attention to me. At this time, Uncle Fu came over and asked with a smile, Master Lin, have you found anything? Do you need to pack up this store? I shook my head and said, No, it's a gift for Eve. I want to buy it with my own money. Finally, I chose a bracelet from among the many products. The price was exactly 13,000. After paying, the clerk smiled politely. I took the bracelet and could not help but imagine how Eve would look wearing it. I thought to myself, Eve, this is my first gift to you. Although the price is not high, it is all my assets at present. When I make money in the future, I will definitely give you the best things in the world. Suddenly, I felt uncomfortable all over. According to the bloody plot of the novel, should something go wrong at this time? Just as I was thinking about it, I heard Kelly's familiar voice. I immediately felt very upset and cursed in my heart. Damn, what bad luck? Kelly and her best friend Hanny stood next to me. When I saw Kelly again, I found that I no longer had any feelings for her, and even the so-called good memories of the past disappeared without a trace. At this moment, my mind was filled with the tragic scene in her previous life where she was made into a beauty bottle and forced to perform in Southeast Asia. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but shiver all over. Kelly said in surprise, Alexander, it's really you. Who is the woman who took you away that day? Also, why did you block all my contact information? Do you know how anxious I was to find you? Wahani saw the exquisite gift box in my hand at a glance and asked, Alexander, is this for our Kelly? Then she reached out to grab it. I quickly took it back, thinking to myself, this is a gift for my dear wife. I have to protect it carefully. When I saw that I didn't give it to her, Wahani said angrily, What do you mean? Do you know who I am? I am Kelly's best friend. With this attitude, how can you pursue our Kelly? Kelly bit her lip, looking at me with a pitiful face, waiting for my answer. I have to say, her appearance can really confuse many people. Today, I cut off my heavy bangs, changed my hairstyle, and matched it with this well-fitting clothes. My whole temperament is different. Kelly seemed to have noticed this and thought to himself, No, I must be with Alexander, so that I can help brother Lin Jian get the shares in Alexander's hands. Wahani was still chattering. Our Kelly is so beautiful. Even if you were a little handsome, it's useless. In today's society, You can't chase girls without sincerity. Do you understand? Now if you are willing to give Kelly and me a bag each, I will persuade Kelly to give you a chance to get close to her. Kelly gently pulled the corner of my clothes and said in a soft voice, Brother Alexander, I just care about you too much, so I ask you this. Even if that woman likes you, and even if something happened between you, I believe you were forced. Can we go back to the way we were before? Eve, who had just rushed over, happened to see this scene. Her eyes instantly became as cold as a knife, staring closely at everything that happened here. My heart skipped a beat, and I thought to myself that something was wrong. I quickly moved sideways and dodged Kelly's hand that was reaching out to grab me. I said, Kelly, you have a bubble in your head. Don't get me into trouble. Get out of here. When Wahani heard this, she was furious. Alexander, who do you think you are? Our Kelly is so beautiful, and she forgave you, but you didn't appreciate it, and you even cursed me. I was amused by her words and said, my wife is much prettier than her. She is pretty, rich, and treats me well. I like her the most and love her the most. Where do you get the confidence to talk to me with your beauty as an asset? Kelly staggered back a step as if she had been slapped hard in the face. She couldn't believe that these words came from Alexander, who used to obey her in everything. She still wanted to find the gentle, considerate, and caring brother Alexander who held her in his hands. Kelly asked in a tearful voice, Brother Alexander, you said that woman is Eve. The murderous aura in her body disappeared in an instant, and she was stunned and stood there blankly. Her assistant Lu Meng saw this scene, and her pupils dilated several times. She thought to herself, Mr. Lin finally saw the sincerity of our President Luo, and God finally opened his eyes. I sneered and said to Kelly, don't be unconvinced. Whether my wife is more beautiful than you know it in your heart. And even if she is extremely ugly, I will only love her. Kelly was full of disbelief and asked, then what am I? What does it matter that you have been chasing me for so long? I said disdainfully. Who do you think you are? You are the king in poker, the busiest in the circus, the craziest in Gotham City. You stand guard in front of McDonald's. You are Batman's big customer, and the pillar of Chow Carry. Uncle Fu suddenly stood up and added, the clown among clowns. Kelly couldn't hold it in any longer. She was really angry. Even if there were rumors about me and other women in the past, she was never so angry. She screamed, Alexander, you dare to call me a clown? I seemed to remember something and said, not really. You're actually a beauty. Eve, watching all this, raised her lips slightly, thinking to herself, well, Alexander's idea is not bad. Assistant Lu Meng beside her couldn't bear it. Her heart stopped beating for a while, then started beating wildly again. Her pupils were dilated in shock again and again. This seemingly ordinary young master could actually cause such a big emotional fluctuation in President Luo. That's right, otherwise he wouldn't let her report Alexander's dynamics at any time. My words scared Kelly a lot. She thought I was trying to scare her, but she still felt a chill in her heart. I finally said, okay, I have to go home to be with my wife. Don't hang around in front of me anymore. I'm afraid my wife will misunderstand me. Besides, I have never liked you, not before and not in the future. As for those things I gave you before, just consider them as feeding the dog. Damn it, if the shopping record wasn't gone, I'd have to get it back. Kelly's eyes were full of tears, and she pretended to be a little white flower who was hurt by a scumbag. In fact, I really want to kill Kelly, but now we live in a society ruled by law, and wouldn't it be more interesting to let her suffer rather than beat her to death with a stick? I was shocked by the terrible thought in my mind. When did I have such a dark mentality? Alas, it is true that people are influenced by bad company. Staying in the Lin family for a long time, it's inevitable that I'll be affected. I turned around and froze. When did Eve come? Oh no, she didn't misunderstand anything. I felt like there were 15 buckets of water being drawn in my heart. Up and down, no one in my family understood. It really was just a fart from the telephone pole. It was just a coincidence. I swore in a panic. Honey, I swear, I have nothing to do with Kelly. If I lie, my whole family will die. The air was filled with a vague, murderous aura, as if it was going to devour me in the next second. Lu Meng had quickly arranged for bodyguards to start clearing the area, and the atmosphere in the entire mall became tense and depressing. Eve walked slowly in front of Kelly with elegant but chilling steps, slapped him hard in the face, and said coldly, get away. Stay away from him, or I'll throw you into the sea to feed the sharks. Kelly and Hohani were so shocked by Eve's powerful aura that their legs went weak, and they dared not say a word. Even though their calves were shaking uncontrollably, they forced themselves not to fall down and ran away with their hands covering their faces in embarrassment. It's like if Eve said she would throw someone into the sea to feed the sharks, she would definitely do what she said. Eve's eyes fell on my hand and asked, "Is this for Kelly?" I immediately acted like a child who had done something wrong and tried to make a gesture. "It's not for Kelly. It's a gift for you." "I'm sorry. I'm limited in my ability. I bought you a bracelet with all my money. If I lie, my whole family will be ruined," I said as I carefully opened the package. Eve's evil spirit disappeared instantly. She looked down at the exquisite bracelet, as if it was the most precious and beautiful work of art in the world. She thought to herself that Alexander meant that he had spent all his assets to choose a gift for her. She slowly stretched out her hand and motioned for me to help her put it on. I carefully put this bracelet, which was not expensive, on her delicate hand. Eve was very satisfied and turned to Lu Ming and said, "Transfer the ownership of this square to Alexander." Lu Ming's pupils trembled with shock, but he quickly recovered and said, "Okay, Mr. Luo." I was watching from the side and was a little surprised. I didn't expect Eve to be so easy to coax. A few words and a small gift made her calm down. At this moment, she looked like a little girl who got her favorite toy. Then Eve suddenly said, "Alexander, kiss me." I froze when I heard that. I looked around subconsciously. Where was the man? Where was Uncle Fu? Where was the bodyguard? Where was the assistant? Where was the clerk? How could no one be seen? Eve reached out and hugged me tightly and said with a hint of grievance and uneasiness, "Alexander, why? Why did you lie to me and let me enjoy the present? If you run away, I will really go crazy." After a long time, Eve's eyes gradually became blurry. I was startled and said quickly, "It's not good to stay here. Let's go home, okay?" Eve nodded and pulled me into the customized Maybach. Even though there was a lot of traffic on the road, other vehicles still gave way to the Maybach and Koenigsegg. When the vehicle entered the manor, the driver and Lu Ming got out of the car quickly and tactfully, and no one intended to ask the people in the car to get out. Eve likes me now. Alexander is very cute in her eyes. The car is full of romance. Eve stares at me and asks, "Why? Why are you so nice to me all of a sudden?" I looked at her lovingly and answered, "Because I love you." Although Eve didn't quite believe it in her heart, she didn't want to pursue it endlessly. She was afraid that she would really guess the reason that made the person in front of her despair. If Alexander left her, she would really go crazy and die. She suddenly asked, "How many gifts have you given to Kelly?" I suddenly realized something and didn't understand why Eve's thoughts jumped so quickly. This was really a life-threatening question. I quickly replied, "I have given gifts to many people since I was a child, including my brothers, best friends, and classmates, but the one I gave to you is the only one I really want to give to my lover." Eve thought this answer was just acceptable. She reminded me, "Remember, you can only give gifts to me, a woman, in the future." I quickly replied, "Yes, sir." Uncle Fu immediately asked the servants to prepare dinner. During the meal, I took the initiative to feed Eve one spoonful at a time and one chopstick at a time. Late at night, after a hard day's work, I fell asleep exhausted, and Eve quietly lingered on me, as if to melt me into her body. She couldn't help but wonder, did Alexander choose to stay because of her body? If so, it would be great. After a long while, Eve still shook her head and thought again, could it be that because she had always sent people to be with him, everything that happened during the day was acted out by him? He severed his relationship with the Lin family and drew a clear line with Kelly. All of this was to protect them, because Alexander knew that he might use them as a tool to threaten him to stay with him. Eve became more and more scared when she thought about it, and cold sweats flowed all over her body. She slowly stood up and left the room. She couldn't help but look back at me and walked quietly to the secret room alone. I don't know when, in a trance, I seemed to see a gorgeous woman applying something. In the morning, I went downstairs and saw Uncle Fu. I said a little awkwardly, "Uncle Fu, that tonic soup." Uncle Fu smiled and said, "I have prepared it for you a long time ago." I felt a little embarrassed, like I was not good enough, so I explained, "It's really because your lady is too demanding." Well, although I felt good about it, something bad would happen sooner or later if it continued like this. When I arrived at the restaurant, I found Eve was there too. I asked, "Don't you have to work today?" Eve nodded and said, "It's the weekend. I can just deal with urgent matters at home." I don't know why, but I always feel that Eve is weird. The weekend was beautiful and warm. It was not until the evening of the next day that Eve suddenly said, "Would you like to drink?" I immediately responded, "Sure, if my wife wants to drink, then I'll risk my life to accompany her." Although I can't drink much, I don't know why I suddenly wanted to drink. Eve stood up and took out a bottle of Matai from the wine cabinet. I was a little dumbfounded when I saw it. Isn't it drinking white wine? Forget it, as long as she is happy. On her way back to the table, Eve felt a pain in her leg. She lost her balance, and the matai in her hand flew out. I was quick-witted and turned 360 degrees. I held Eve's waist with one hand and caught the flying matai with the other hand. I said, "You little girl, be careful." This ambiguous action made Eve's heart beat fast. Only I could give her this feeling. She replied, "You bastard, hold on tight." I thought to myself, okay, I was really a bastard in my last life. After a few sips of wine, Eve narrowed her eyes. She knew that I couldn't drink much, but she still poured me one glass after another until the whole bottle of wine was gone. I was already dizzy and said in a daze, "Honey, are you worried about something? Why are you flying in the sky? Hey, honey, you are so strong. Are you going to participate in the Olympics? Why are there two rabbits running in front of me?" After listening to what I said, Eve was silent for a while, but she felt very comfortable when I called her wife. She thought to herself that she could get me drinking often in the future. She then asked, "Alexander, do you still like Kelly?" I suddenly sat up and asked, "Is Kelly a human or a ghost? Are you Kelly?" Eve's face became colder. After thinking for a while, she said in a low voice, "It's me, brother Alexander. Don't you like me anymore?" As she spoke, she reached out to hold me. Who knew I would be like touching shit, shouting, "Don't touch me. I'm afraid of getting dirty. Eve won't like me if I get dirty." Eve also likes the name Eve, or rather, she likes all the names I call her. She then asked, "Who is Eve?" I answered in a daze. Eve is of course my wife, my master, my heaven, and the person I love the most. Eve was stunned. She couldn't believe these words came out of my mouth. If I really loved her so much, why didn't I show it before, and even felt disgust and fear towards her? Looking at my state, Eve narrowed her eyes and wondered, am I not drunk? Or maybe men are only 70% drunk. A scene that makes you cry? She didn't give up and continued to test. "Alexander, I'm Kelly. Do you really not love me anymore?" I mumbled in a daze. "I do. I love you more than I love a dog." After saying this, I fell head first onto the bed. Looking at me sleeping peacefully, Eve undressed me and covered me with a quilt with all her tenderness. I don't know if it was because she was too tired or really drunk. I slowly woke up again, feeling much better. This was one of the few times since my rebirth that I was able to recuperate. Today, Eve still did not go to the company, but handled work in the manor. She looked at everything around her and felt a sense of peace in her heart. She thought if she could stay with me like this until old age, it would not be a bad idea. But she understood that this kind of life could not last forever. She knew that once she stopped making progress, more people would step on her shoulders and climb up, and she might not end up well in the end. Therefore, she had to be ruthless and use the truest cruelty in her heart to deal with all her enemies until no one could stop her. Eve. Today, lawyer Sue Kai finally delivered my new household registration book. I walked up to her with the household registration book, my voice a little relaxed. Lin Tianba has not yet decided to hand over the dividends. I am ready to sue, but I need to confirm with you before suing. Sue Kai's voice was calm, and I was calm inside, but I was laughing secretly. He did nothing but leave me that seed. It's time to let him know what reality is. After Sue Kai left, I took the household registration booklet, and suddenly a thought popped up in my mind. Should I go get a marriage certificate with Eve? This idea stunned me. Even though she put on a wedding dress for me in my last life, I still can't figure out the answer in my heart. Eve, do you really want to own me, or is it just an obsession? I walked into the study and saw Eve sitting in front of the computer, concentrating on her work with a cold look on her face. I quietly approached her, leaned over, and gave her a light kiss on the face. "Good morning." She was stunned for a moment, turned around, and suddenly, a flash of panic flashed in her eyes, and then the corners of her mouth slightly raised, and she gave me a passionate kiss. I was a little confused, and I was wondering in my heart, did she really like me? Or was it just for some other reason? She looked at me and seemed to be trying to figure out what I was thinking. "How do you feel?" I asked her with a smile. "It feels good. It would be better if the kiss lasted longer." She looked at me and smiled gently and a little mischievously. I patted my chest and joked, "Don't worry, there's absolutely no problem with my body. We can fight for another 300 rounds." Eve smiled slightly, with a hint of cunning in her eyes. As the atmosphere gradually became relaxed, I turned my head to look at her computer screen and found that she was in a video conference. Seeing the dull faces on the screen, I was suddenly stunned. Unexpectedly, she was actually holding a meeting at home. Eve did not shy away from it, but just gently turned off the computer and with a casual movement, the video screens of the executives disappeared instantly. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "You were holding a meeting at home?" She didn't feel embarrassed at all, but said calmly, "There's nothing to hide." Her indifference made me feel that she had completely adapted to this kind of life, and could even show her unique charm when she was relaxed. I suddenly felt a little nervous. "I didn't cause you any trouble, did I?" Eve smiled softly and shook her head. "No." As soon as she finished speaking, my heart suddenly felt heavy. Then, she suddenly gave me the answer I had been waiting for. "I promise you that you can come and go freely in the manor, but there are some conditions." Her eyes were serious, and her voice was still gentle, but with a hint of unquestionable authority. "You can't leave, and you can't go find Kelly." I was stunned, thinking to myself, is she afraid that I will do something wrong? Afraid that I will cheat? She looked at my lost eyes and smiled slightly. "Don't worry, I just want you to feel at ease." "So, what about the marriage certificate?" I asked her. Eve was silent for a moment and finally said, "The marriage certificate is not important to me. What is important is whether you are by my side and whether you can go on with me." There were complex emotions in her eyes, as if she was struggling with some issues. In the end, she didn't reject me. Eve held my hand and whispered, "I promise you, but that doesn't mean I won't doubt you anymore." We finally decided to get the marriage certificate, and this action might be to satisfy her little wish, or just for her own peace of mind. As the car drove all the way to the registration office, her expression was still calm, but at that moment, I knew that she had made her choice. "I owe you a wedding and a ring," she said lightly. My heart was suddenly touched. I smiled and said, "I don't care about the ring. The wedding can be later, but what I want is you." Eve shook her head gently. "No, you will get more." She pointed at me. "The black card I gave you has a limit of 10 billion. I can give you any ring you want or anything else you want." I was stunned, her words still echoing in my mind. 10 billion yuan? Is it really mine? Did I really not see her good side in my previous life? Damn it. Why didn't I realize this earlier? No, I have to earn it on my own. I made a silent decision in my heart, feeling Eve's face gradually turning cold. I held her face in my hands and whispered, "Eve, look at me. I am your man. You can't be the only one contributing to this family. I also need to make money." I laughed at myself and said, "If it's my own money, I will spend it casually. But I can't spend my wife's money casually. But if it's given to you, I want to earn money to buy it myself." Eve's eyes softened after hearing this. She nodded slightly, then shook her head. "I understand." Then, her tone became gentle. "Don't call me by my name anymore." "What should I call you then?" I felt a little sweet. "Wife Eve, kiss my little baby, whatever you want." Her tone was a little teasing. She wanted to tell me that I didn't need to work so hard. The wealth she had was enough for me to squander in several lifetimes, even if I started a business. But she didn't discourage me. She suppressed her thoughts and gently touched the bracelet, which was not expensive. "Riao, happiness is like this." "Eve, honey, can I post something on WeChat Moments?" I asked half-jokingly. "Of course, Alexander. Anything is fine." Eve smiled and nodded. I picked up my phone, took a photo of my hands holding the marriage certificate, and edited a message for my moments. "My girlfriend is taken. I love my wife." As soon as I posted it, my moments were instantly flooded with comments. My classmates, former instructors, and friends who had worked with me all commented. After a while, David called me, his voice full of surprise. "Dude, what's going on with you? Did you get married with Kelly?" I smiled faintly. "It's not Kelly. We've had no relationship for a long time." David was obviously relieved. "Who is that?" "Brother Lin." His seemingly unintentional teasing actually revealed his misunderstanding between Kelly and I. Then I replied, "I didn't just marry someone randomly. I found my true love. She's really beautiful, has a sweet voice, and she's a wealthy woman." David suddenly seemed to understand, and after a long time, he laughed and said, "Yeah." That night, the mark on my shoulder became more and more obvious. Eve saw the scar on my shoulder and frowned. "I don't want to use scar remover for this scar." I smiled. "This is the mark Eve left on me. I want it to be imprinted here forever, telling the world that I am hers." Eve stared at me with deep starlight in her eyes. "You think so?" I chuckled. "Only in this way can I feel your presence at all times." My words were filled with a hint of self-mockery and determination. The next day at breakfast, I unconsciously looked up at the clock on the wall, the corners of my mouth slightly raised, and I couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Uncle Fu was about to go out, and I whispered, "You don't have to follow me. I'm a little uncomfortable." Uncle Fu wanted to say something, but I interrupted him. "You can ask Eve for permission." Don't worry, I won't run around anymore. He hesitated, but nodded, and went to call Eve. A few minutes later, he came back with a hint of relief in his eyes. The lady said it's okay. I don't hate Eve's surveillance. I smiled slightly, feeling a little complicated. Indeed, Eva's presence made me feel a little depressed, especially when I thought about going to school in the future. There would always be a group of bodyguards around me, making me look particularly awkward. After breakfast, I started the car and drove the Koenigsegg out of the manor. Through the rearview mirror, I noticed a commercial vehicle following behind me not too far away. I was moved. This was what Uncle Fu meant by relaxing. But in fact, he was still guarding around me, but he didn't follow me directly. At this time, Eve has arrived at the office and is looking at her mobile phone screen intently. Just now, when she saw me smiling in front of the camera, she couldn't help feeling a little strange. Although she pretended not to notice anything, I knew she must be thinking about something. She relaxed her guard a little. After all, the school term at Kyoto University had not yet begun, and students were still in a relaxed stage of daily life. Among them, David is also in school, but he is not as leisurely as others. David used to be my best friend. I remember that when he learned of my death in my previous life, he cried bitterly and was heartbroken. I felt sad, just like a grandson bidding farewell to his grandfather. I knew David was a little dull, but I couldn't let him go through the same fate as he did in his previous life. I had to protect him no matter how hard it was. I also remember clearly that in the days that followed, David would experience some family changes that would completely change his life. He would be hurt by a bad woman, depressed, and finally become unhappy. At that time, I was playing the escape and chase with Eve, so busy that I had no time to pay attention to him. The day after I died, David had an accident while driving under the influence, which not only broke both of his legs, but also made him lose his mobility forever. This is undoubtedly a great tragedy in life. Back to the present. I came to David's school. I parked my car in the on-campus parking lot, walked back to the dormitory where I used to live, and found him. David at this time was just as I remembered. His life was still full of chaos and absurdity. When I walked into the dormitory, I saw him squatting in the toilet, and his phone accidentally fell down. His face looked a little unnatural, and I couldn't help laughing out loud. When David saw me coming in, his hand shook and the phone fell down again. I walked closer and teased. "Old Woo, what are you doing? You dropped your phone, and you didn't even pick it up?" David explained embarrassedly. "Brother Lin, it's not what you think. I just dropped my phone." After he picked up the phone, his face was covered in sweat, and he looked a little embarrassed. I almost couldn't help laughing out loud. "You are really awesome. Even though you are in such a desperate situation, you still remember to pick up your phone." Then, I suddenly had an idea and decided to open a media company, and David was the blogger I wanted to invite. He looked at me in shock. "Be a blogger? Do you think I am suitable?" I smiled and nodded. "You are pretty silly. You will definitely attract a lot of attention." David still didn't believe it. "Are you serious? With my standard of living, how can I be a blogger?" I smiled nonchalantly. "My wife is rich, so starting a company won't be a problem." David heard this. He was suddenly a little surprised. "Wife? Are you married?" I took out my phone, opened the photo of the marriage certificate, and pointed it directly at David's face. "My wife is a rich woman, 3 years older than me." David almost jumped up in fright. "You deserve to die. This is more painful than killing me." David and I discussed future plans. I told him that I had severed my relationship with the Lin family, which surprised him again, and he praised me for my courage. When we went downstairs to the parking lot, we met some people gathered around a car. I saw the car. It was a Koenigsegg. Only 6 were produced in the world, and the price had soared to 100 million. I was shocked and thought, is there such a rich person in our school?